Welcome to the Teen Life Podcast, where we explore your questions to help you make meaningful connections with teenagers, because no teen deserves to feel alone. Have a question you'd like us to address? Email us at podcast@teenlife.ngo. Now, let's jump into this week's question.
Why does my fifth grader suddenly seem like a middle schooler? They are a year away, but I've even been talking to some of my youth group parents that have sixth grade boys, fifth grade boys, and he's just talking like about what is happening.
Yeah.
Like just testing boundaries in a way that they haven't before, and they just seem older. And I think the perspective shift that we kind of want to set up this episode with is that kids aren't growing up too fast. Their environment is like their environment's changing. And if you look at all of the research, it's also just a trend that's somewhat new because of the culture, because of everything else that they're intaking in their world, like through social media, other things, in just a way that kids have never had before.
Right. I was going to say, I think if you look at a fifth grader now and compared them to when I was a fifth grader, it's just very different.
Yeah.
And probably one of the biggest things, and we'll get into this a little more, but they're socially, digitally, like they've got phones in their pockets. They're on social media. That was not even a question when I was in elementary school. And so you're seeing these move earlier and earlier. I also think just in general, puberty starts sooner than it did 10, 20 years ago. And so you're seeing hormones, expectations, all these things are catching up to fifth graders. And so I heard someone say the other day, fourth and fifth grade is the new seventh and eighth grade. Like it's just...
Which is terrifying.
Right. But these issues that you think, no, that's middle school, we'll wait for that in middle school. You're having to talk about it sooner. You're having to deal with it sooner because that's just the way our world is moving.
Also, schools now developmentally place them together. I don't know, in DFW, like in Tulsa area, you have elementary and then you have intermediate, which is fifth and sixth. And then you have middle school, which is seventh, eighth, and then they have high school. And so I think developmentally now, like I think even just across the board, schools themselves are treating them almost close enough to sixth graders and middle schoolers.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note, I think we are also expecting a lot more from our younger kids. Like, I'm way older than y'all, but when I went to kindergarten, it was, here's where you learn how to tie your shoes and the colors, and here's how you learn how to read in kindergarten. And now if you're not reading by like 3, 4, you're considered behind. And so that trickles into those early adolescent years of you're expected to be on a higher level at the age of 9, 10 than you used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be when you were 10 years old, you're still in elementary and you're still just a little kid. And so, and now some of that is we're our own doing with the, like you said, social media and the phones and all that stuff. But it is also interesting that our biological clocks have started, or they sped up essentially. And I'm sure there's a lot of data and stuff that goes into that. That's not great and crazy, but we in general have just pushed the timeline up on every single kid going through schools right now.
I think too, some of it can also be linked to, like we said, social media, but also just like organized sports that students are getting into sooner now to prep for whenever you get into seventh grade and start doing school. Like there's just a big push for clubs level sports that students are getting into earlier and earlier. And you just think about the pressures that piles on with social media, with academic pressures. And it just it makes sense as to why a sixth grader, fifth grader who already doesn't really know how to regulate emotions is having all of these emotions and expectations that kids those age might not have had ever before.
That's good. Yeah, we're putting a lot on their plates. And then if you add a cell phone on top of it, you're talking that's disrupting their sleep. You're talking they're seeing comparison stuff. So research, and I'll post links if you really want to go dive into it, but research shows that children are experiencing anxiety and depressive symptoms at younger ages than in previous decades. And they're especially seeing it in ages like 9 to 12. And they would say it's because they're self-conscious, they are having more comparison, and they're getting more social feedback. So liking posts, seeing if their friends are hanging out without them, all of that stuff adds up over time. And you're adding it to the sport pressure, the school pressure, the home pressure, more expectations. And it's just a lot to put on kids who we did a brain science thing last semester But think about even younger kids, how their brain just isn't even fully developed, and we're putting all this stuff on them and then going, wait, why are you acting like that? What do you mean? And so I think this is stuff that we need to be talking about of how can we help them. I don't know. Like I said, they're not necessarily changing, but their environment is. Yeah. So how can we help them navigate their environment when they're using a lot of energy just trying to survive out there?
Well, with anxiety and comparison and like identity questions showing up earlier, like the kids as young as 9 are beginning, like they have to evaluate all that stuff, and they're not used to doing that. It used to be, hey, I'm going to show up. What do I have for lunch today? Cool. What am I doing for this? And so it's just, they have to worry about social status at a much earlier age, belonging, peer reputation. And then when they're online and constantly connected, that is something that just magnifies it. I think every kid, and honestly, maybe even every parent there's a Black Mirror episode from a few years ago that had Bryce Dallas Howard in it. And like the whole, like it was kind of like a dystopian setting of your whole value, and like everything you did was based on your like Instagram likes. So like you couldn't fly on a plane unless you had X amount of followers, and you couldn't eat at a certain coffee shop unless you had, this many likes or whatever it may be. And it was really like sobering and scary, but it's like, we're also not very far from that reality as well, because they're used to like having family and play and stuff like that, but they also now have to spend a lot of energy making sure that their online stuff is like. And so my oldest son just asked for Instagram like this week, and it's been a conversation. And I know some of this stuff because of what we've talked about, and just because I'm around teens a lot. But they even like have this situation where they have their curated social page. So it's like, well, this is where all the good stuff goes. But then I also have my spam account. So I can put it's like, so you're not only worried about your social status, but you're also worried about what you look like in your brand. And it's just like, why are teenagers worried about their brand?
And you throw in the fact that with younger students, developmentally, their sense of self isn't fully developed, right? Like they're still a little developmentally unaware of what other people are viewing me. And like as a student minister, it's one of the most disheartening things seeing a student go from like middle school, doesn't care, wearing all the neon. And I'm like, yes. Like in a sense, middle schoolers can be a lot, but I love that sense that they like, I don't care. And then you see it developmentally, they're aware that other people are aware of them. And I think you're seeing that sooner and sooner with these 5th and 6th graders, and you're kind of missing some of that development that says, I'm figuring out who I am outside of what others think of me. Yeah. And I think social media is training us, all of us, adults too, that says, who am I? Who am I becoming? And if you let social media answer those questions for you, it's going to lead to some red flags, to some unhealthy things. So like, I guess my next question is like, how do we know what's normal?
Yeah. If you're a parent or an actual teen or tween, there's a difference between normal development and red flags. Like normal stuff that happens between 9 to 12-year-olds is fluctuating moods, like, the desire for approval from their peers and their, adults, and just kind of being more aware of who they are. Like, I think a perfect example of this is Inside Out. Like Inside Out, the first one is a great example of someone that's kind of being more aware of they're not necessarily a little kid anymore. And then the second one kind of dives more into what we're talking about, which is anxiety and stuff. But one of the red flags to watch for that's not normal development is if they're constantly withdrawing themselves, if they're going to their room, locking the door, if they're having dramatic refusals of like going to school or doing schoolwork, extreme mood swings that just kind of interfere with normal life. And then also just a significant academic decline. So, and that's if your kid is a good student and they dive bomb with grades, like that's a pretty obvious. But also those kids that maybe don't do well in school, if you see them going even further, like just be aware of that too. Just because a kid, it doesn't matter what academic level they're on, you can decline no matter what, and just kind of be aware of that. Because, like I said, it's a hard balance of trying to differentiate what is normal hormones, normal puberty, that kind of stuff, versus what's something that's being driven more from just being constantly connected.
Right. And we've talked about that a lot. We've talked about cell phone use. We talked about the book, The Anxious Generation, even. Yeah. But there is a lot of research out there that says waiting longer, waiting at least until 8th, isn't wait till 8th kind of the push right now that's being pushed, makes a significant difference. And so if you're listening and your tween has a cell phone already or has access to social media, that's just something to consider. because it does lead to increased anxiety. It reduces their emotional regulation. So thinking about both of those hand in hand is scary and dangerous. But once again, just the world that our kids live in, they're never off duty. Never. Like they never get a break. And with even just things that are happening around the world, as an adult, I need a break. I need to be able to turn it off and go, I was not ever intended to get this much information or this much feedback from people ever. And then we're asking our kids to do that younger and younger. And so I think one of the questions we need to ask is not just like, what rules do I need to put in place, but what skills do we need to help our kids develop so that when they are dealing with these pressures, when they even then get into middle school, how are they handling that?
Yeah.
Because you're not necessarily going to just rule book them away or tell them, hey, stop doing that, and they're going to stop. So we need to equip them. And so we've kind of we'll talk through some practical things that we can do to help.
I think like the big thing is just like, I don't know, as I look, and I've been doing some reading in this as well, of just the power of habits and the structure of boundaries with social media, with how you use them even as a parent. And I think like one of the big ways that you can help your child or student is by emulating it yourself too. Like evaluate your boundaries with social media, with your phone, and then talk with them, right? Like, hey, here's why I don't get on my phone in the morning, right? And why I'm not having it until after breakfast or until after I do these things. It's because like, I don't want that to form the rest of my day.
Right.
And so just talking with them and then maybe giving them tools in conversation, like through conversation of just like basic self-awareness and putting to words. And I think we'll talk some about this next episode of putting to words the things that they are feeling can help in just so many ways developmentally, of just like emotionally, how am I feeling? How do I deal with this in a healthy way?
Right.
And then just like coping steps, taking deep breaths, walking, having adults that they can trust with you, outside of you. And it just prepares them, especially as they start developing more and more and experiencing these feelings, with some tools that kind of can help regulate them before the stress peaks.
And when it comes to regulation, I think that's a good word, because at this age, self-regulation is not as natural. And so that's some stuff that I think as an adult, we've got to step alongside them. And that's where I'm saying, don't just say a rule of say, hey, this is when you can and can't be on your phone. Maybe it's, hey, we're all doing this together. I'm coming alongside you and I'm going to help you co-regulate. Yeah. So that means, hey, we're going to eat meals together as a family, and we're going to make this intentional where we can talk about feelings. We can have those conversations in a stress-free way. Maybe it's also scheduled play. Like intentionally look for ways as a family that you can do those things together. And maybe that's, we just had a pickleball tournament. Maybe it's going and playing pickleball as a family and just letting them be kids. Letting them go to the park. Don't let them just sit and watch TV all day, even if that's easier. But remember that they're kids, which also comes with, they're going to make mistakes and they're going to probably make a mess and they're probably going to get in trouble. And you have to be okay with that because they're figuring those things out. And you'd rather that happen when they're in school or when they're in your home before they get somewhere else.
And I think screen-free time is important, but also meeting them where they're at. And some of the best, I think, moments that some parents maybe in my generation are struggling with more is if they are playing video games or they are doing something like on screens, like join them for that. Like I have a buddy that during COVID, he said the best time of COVID for him was that him and his son got really good at Fortnite together. It's like some 40-year-old dude that's really good at Fortnite. Like that's weird, right? But it's a thing that him and his son had together. And so so there are times that yes, you do want to be screen free, but it's like sometimes steer into the skid and and say, hey, what are you playing? Like, can I play with you? Or can I, like some of my best memories growing up were playing Mario Kart with my parents, and so like that can also kind of show that not only are you taking an interest in what they're doing, but it also kind of lets them see that you're also trying. So that whenever you ask them to do something that's out of their normal, it kind of can go both ways. So like, again, showing them, modeling with your phone is important, but also like meeting them where they're at too sometimes can go a long way as well.
I heard someone recently tell us when their kids were in the home, they made the main TV where the video games were. And the mom joked. She was like, I knew nothing of pop culture for those years because my boys were playing video games always. But she was like, it was a way that we were together. that they weren't just off by themselves, but they had to be in the main living room, and I was making dinner and I was there with them and I could have conversation. I was listening to what they were saying to their friends. Yeah. And so maybe that's also a way to connect. But at Teen Life, if you didn't know, we developed a 5th grade curriculum recently because we've been noticing and schools have been saying we need help earlier. Yeah. Teens, tweens need support starting earlier. And so what can we do? And so if you have questions about that, reach out to us, reach out to Tobin especially, and we can just tell you more about what we've done to take our curriculum and just make it just a little bit easier for 5th graders to step in and get these skills when it comes to stress, when it comes to relationships, all of those things, finding strengths and resources and knowing, hey, I can ask for help if I need it. And those are all really big things that can help them build those skills that you want them to have going into their teen years and away from that.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think in a few years before, we were looking at high schoolers and like, we really need to get connected with high schoolers to stop all these things from happening. And that's good. But also there's some in hindsight, like, man, maybe we should have started this earlier. Maybe we should have put in more guardrails and protections earlier. Like, and I think the biggest thing that I see in kids this age, especially like these 9 through 12-year-olds, is this is whenever the bad sleep starts. I've noticed more and more that they'll be like, well, my mom goes to bed at 9 and I stay up till 11 because she doesn't know, or whatever it may be. Or my mom's at work and they're fending for themselves a lot of times, but also, yes, they are also learning how to be a little bit more sneaky and independent on that kind of stuff. And so really, like, high schoolers they say they can get away with lack of sleep, and sometimes that is the truth, but these ages just can't do that. Like, close to 10 hours of sleep. Yeah. And so I think that's a big factor in some of these things that we're talking about as well, is that at this age they start acting like a teenager already, and that includes staying up till 2 a.m. playing video games and stuff, whenever really that's the last thing they need to be doing. So good sleep is a real important part of this age level as well. We hope that you liked what you heard today, and we know that the 5th grade space is new for a lot of Teen Life people, and it's what we need to be doing. It's what we need to be watching for. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and reach out to us on social media or to podcast@teenlife.ngo to submit any questions you may have, or if you need any support for your 5th graders. And we'll see you next time.